There was a nice, hot, singy smell, and at the table, with an iron in her hand, stood a very stout, short person staring anxiously at Lucy. Her print gown was tucked up, and she was wearing a large apron over her striped petticoat. Her little black nose went sniffle, sniffle, snuffle, and her eyes went twinkle, twinkle. And under her cap, where Lucy had yellow curls, that little person had prickles.
As a child, I loved the character of Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle, and like Beatrix Potter, I'd sit in my own garden dreaming up characters based on the creatures I found there. And I wasn't alone. Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle has found a place in the hearts of people all over the world, and she has helped to make hedgehogs the nation's favourite animal. But while Tiggy-Winkle has gone from strength to strength, now appearing in a Hollywood movie, the same can't be said for hedgehogs, whose populations are declining fast. What was once a common sight in British gardens soon might only be seen on the silver screen. I've spent the past few months speaking to the experts, enthusiasts and everyday people doing their bit to try and help hedgehogs out of this prickly predicament. Oxford's dreamy spires beckon academics from across the world, but it's one academic in particular I've come here to see. Hugh Warwick, an author and ecologist with a particular fondness for hedgehogs. He spends his time educating people about the decline in hedgehog populations and has helped to put together a report which highlights the problems hedgehogs are facing.
We've just published our latest report, State of Britain's Hedgehogs 2018. It's the third of these reports we've done. And what they show is that whilst urban hedgehog population has declined by about a third since the turn of the century, rural populations have declined by over a half, and in some parts of the country are, as one of the researchers put it, simply in freefall. It's not unreasonable to suggest that the hedgehog population in this country has declined by 95% since the end of the Second World War. That's the sort of decline which you expect to hear about, the exotic, charismatic megafauna from Africa or from India. But here we've got the most popular creature in this country, which the hedgehog is, having the sort of decline which should be setting alarm bells ringing, and has begun so.
So what does that actually look like? Well, each of the hedgehogs on this map represents 1.5 million of them in the wild. And in 1950, there were an estimated 30 million hedgehogs roaming our gardens and fields. But as time's gone on, those numbers have dropped. Urbanisation in towns and cities, and the intensification of agriculture in our countryside have made life hard for the hedgehog. And there are now just 1.5 million of them left in the United Kingdom. If this trend continues, hedgehogs in Britain could become extinct in just 10 years' time. With the numbers of rural hedgehogs declining at such an alarming rate, many people have begun blaming farmers, and one of those people is wildlife presenter and visiting professor at the University of Lincoln, Chris Packham.
Unfortunately, we see agriculture with a high degree of dependency on pesticides, insecticides, molluscicides. These are the things that the hedgehogs eat. There simply isn't the food out there. And I think that the overall culprit, not totally, the overall culprit has to be the intensification of agriculture. We've seen that impact so negatively on birds and bats, other indicator species. Hedgehogs have got to be part of that portfolio, I think.
But here on W&AC Farms, they say things are changing for the better. In fact, they say they've never done more for the hedgehog.
If you're talking about pesticide use, which is sort of general spray use really on crops, I would suggest that's gone down by a huge amount. The active ingredient in the sprays has been reduced by a lot. We only spray crops where it's absolutely necessary, so you try and use as little as possible. I mean, your hedgehogs in the hedgerows, I would suggest the hedgehogs in the hedgerows are looked after better now than they ever were.
Although much of the hedgehog habitat was removed about 60 years ago, William says they've now begun putting it back, and he took me on a tour of his farm to show me how they've been restoring the landscape.
This field here is now, it's about 40 acres. In 1969 we took the hedge out between the two, and it was a 14-acre field and sort of 20-odd acre field. All those hedges were taken out, 40 years ago, 50 years ago nearly. And there hasn't been a hedge taken out down here on this vista for 40 years. and we've been busy sort of putting hedges in and filling the gaps in hedges pretty much over the last 15 years ever since, really.
While there is still work to be done, it's clear that at least some farmers are trying to improve the situation for rural hedgehogs. But that doesn't help those hedgehogs that live in our cities and towns. No, those hedgehogs need your help.
I think that the first thing to say is if you've got a hedgehog already in your garden, make sure that you're looking after it. So make sure that it can access your neighbours' gardens without going onto the street. Make holes in your fences if you've got them, and ask your neighbours to do the same too. You can put a hedgehog box in a quiet corner of your garden, and you can allow that area to be overgrown if you like, so that the hedgehog will move into that box. But critically also try to get your neighbours to do the same. We know that they don't go into hibernate in one box, spend the whole winter there, and then wake up again. They move throughout the course of the winter, so they'll need more than one site. So it's about a community effort here. And then lastly, of course, you can top them up by feeding them. We know that in order to get through the winter, hedgehogs have to reach a critical weight. Their body fat they need sufficient body fat to get through that winter, and if they don't get to that weight, they won't make it. So certainly in the autumn time, if you have the capacity to feed hedgehogs, then do so.
And while it might not be too difficult to do your bit at home, one woman in Louth has gone above and beyond the call of duty. Elaine Drury has run hedgehog care for almost 40 years, and in that time she has rehabilitated over 30,000 sick and injured hedgehogs. Elaine has devoted her life and her home to ensuring there's a future for Britain's hedgehogs.
My messy house provides intensive care, which involves new arrivals coming to be investigated, diagnosed and sorted. But all these are still under investigation. They're quarantined in boxes before they go out into the cages outside, so that when they do go outside to convalesce, they're all clean and free of any disease. The intensive care, as I call them, they go on for every box, and they're upstairs and in the bathroom, which is not very nice for human standards, but they don't complain. Had they not come in, all these would have died, so it might be a little bit of an unconventional hospital, but at least they're given a second chance at survival.
In an annex just outside, stable hedgehogs are given a chance to recover in the convalescent ward.
So those that I've been looking after in my messy house with intensive care injections and regular treatment, they're supposed now to be getting used to not being handled and eating more varied and rough food. They've got to learn from having chosen the best food they could possibly have to making do as opportunists to anything they can find. The stay in the convalescent ward varies according to how bad they've got. If they've had to have a leg amputated, then they've got to learn to walk, and so they spend some time in the outside runs learning to walk. If they come in for just ticks or fleas, we can clear those. They can be gone in a matter of days. In fact, yeah, they don't usually bother coming out into the convalescent ward. I can deal with those in the house. Hopefully these are off the worry list and are just waiting to go back, hopefully from where they came, providing it's a good enough place. Our whole aim is to mend ill hedgehogs and give them a second chance, so the main aim is to release them and let them take the chance. And it's a thing I can't, beyond being here, I can't control what chance they get of survival once they've gone.
But while things might seem bleak for the hedgehog, there is a sliver of hope in all of this. Due to the efforts of people like Elaine, decline in urban areas is beginning to level off. And that's an indication that we might not be too late to make a difference after all. But why do so many people devote their lives to making that difference? And why are hedgehogs so endearing and so loved by the British public? Well, Hugh Warwick believes he knows the answer.
Well, hedgehogs are quite clearly the most important creature on the planet. I mean, having studied them for over 30 years and spent a lot of time reading about the ecology, biology, behaviour, physiology of all sorts of wildlife, I simply cannot find another creature which is as amazing, important, charismatic and interesting as the hedgehog. The simple matter is, actually, they don't have a fight or flight response. I mean, that's really the bottom line of it. The reason why people find hedgehogs so attractive is because they can get close to them. We're surrounded by birds at the moment. There's flocks of black-headed gulls over there. There are robins, there are wrens, there are various tits around the place tweeting away. It's all fantastic. But you're never going to get that close to them. You're never going to form any sort of connection with them because they're flighty. They fly away. Most other wildlife, you'll find they will attack you if you get too close. But because the hedgehog doesn't have a fight or flight response, they'll roll up in a ball when they're approached. They'll unroll. You can look at them. You can get nose to nose, look into the eyes of this fantastic sentient predator, bigger than 99% of animals that have ever lived on this planet. It's in the top 1% with the blue whale, Tyrannosaurus rex and us. It is a phenomenal thing and we can get close to it.